Hey, my name is Josh, and this video is a demonstration of the Get-ItemState command recently added to MilestonePSTools, and how you can generate a report that looks a bit like this, where we have the camera and what recording server and site that camera's on, and the current state, whether it's responding, not responding, and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at a few of the commands that we're going to be using here. So Get-ItemState is what's pulling the information about whether a camera's responding. It also gets information about hardware devices, servers, and basically any item in the system. It can take a few seconds or possibly several minutes to execute because it's getting the state of absolutely everything in the VMS. So on a large several thousand camera site, that it's possible that could take a few minutes. I actually haven't had a chance to test it myself, but and then the other commands here are just kind of helper commands to get a little bit more information out of the result. So we have get platform item that can help convert a FQID into an item, and we can explore what that actually means a little bit later. And same with get kind, it helps convert a kind GUID, an identifier, into a meaningful display name and category. And get configuration item is a configuration API wrapper that lets us use the Milestone configuration API to get information about objects and traverse up and down the tree of objects in the VMS. And that's how we'll get from the camera object to the hardware to the recorder and then ultimately to the management server to get that information into our report. Okay, so let's start with the Get-ItemState command. So I'm just going to leave the sidebar there, and I'm gonna disconnect real quick. And if you haven't installed MilestonePSTools yet, the command is install module MilestonePSTools. And if you're not running PowerShell as an administrator, you can install it not for all users on the machine, but just for your current user by doing scope current user. Okay, I've already got it installed, so I don't need to do that. I just need to connect to my management server. So connect management server, and it's on the same machine right now, so I'll just put in localhost. You don't have to be on the same machine as the management server to use the module, but I just happen to be. Okay, so I'm connected. Let's do a get item state and just see what the results look like. It'll take about 3 seconds. If I can spell. Okay, so I'll scroll up here. So we have an FQID, and it's just giving us the name of that object type, not actually showing us any details in this table yet. And then the state. So it's just a string, server responding, not responding, enabled. There's a few different possible states. So what is an FQID? Some of the stuff with MilestonePSTools, you'll want to reference the MIP SDK, the Milestone SDK documentation, because it'll help explain some of these topics in more detail. But an FQID is a fully qualified identifier. It's a identifier that the SDK can use to find an object in the configuration. So an FQID might be for a camera or a server, any type of object, and it's just kind of a way for the SDK to locate it in the configuration. So let's take a look at one of these FQIDs. Let's save that in results. And I'm just going to pick a random result in here, number 20. Whoops. Plural results. There we go. So let's take a look at the FQID and see what that looks like. So we have a server ID object, and then a few identifiers, the parent ID, the object ID, and the kind. So we have absolutely no idea, unless you've memorized what the different kinds IDs are. So a kind is like a camera has a specific kind ID, and a speaker and so on. So this ID tells us that this device is something. It might be a camera, it might be a speaker, but it doesn't tell us what it is, or which camera it is. And then this object ID combined with the kind will tell us, will help us navigate to that item in the configuration. So you really don't want to have to mess with FQIDs yourself. So there's that's what the get platform and get kind commands will help you to translate. So let's send this FQID into the get platform item command. Okay, so now we know it's a camera named my M3007 camera 10, and it's enabled. It doesn't have a GPS position. So so now we know what camera it is, so that's handy. If we wanted to just find out what kind a particular result was, so let's go to number 21, and we'll just get kind. Okay, so that one is also a camera. So the kind ID was 5135, so on and so forth. And it's a camera, and the category of this item type is video in. Pretty self-explanatory. So let's look at a script that produced the results we looked at the start of the video. So there's a lot here. We'll just step through it. So this is just going to hold the results from going through and building up this report. And we're going to go through for each lets us enumerate through some results. So we're going to do get item state, and the dash cameras only. We'll just filter it so it only gives us the results from camera items. And the first thing that we'll do with this item state is use the get platform item command to get the item so that we can figure out what the name of that camera is. And by chance, if it happens to not give us a valid item, we'll just skip it and continue through the for each. Sometimes when you try to resolve an item, an FQID into an item, it might not, the SDK might not be able to give it to you, and so you'll just get a null object. So we'll discard that. And then the next thing we'll do is run get camera, because we want to grab a camera object to let us navigate from the camera up to the recorder, or the hardware, then the recorder and the site. So get camera, and we'll provide the ID. So item FQID, object ID, or we could have done item state.fqid.object ID either way. Okay, and then once we have our camera, we can use get configuration item, part of the configuration API. So we'll send the camera to the get configuration item command, and then ask for the parent item of that camera, and that's going to give us the hardware. So once we have the hardware, we do the same thing again. We send the hardware to the get configuration item command, get the parent item of that hardware, which is a recorder, and we do it again to get the site. So now we've got objects referencing the camera, hardware, recorder, and site, and we can use those to create a new object that is a PowerShell custom object with these specific properties. So the camera, and we'll grab the camera name, hardware display name, recorder display name, and the state. And then we just add that to our results, and then we can print it to the console. So I'm going to uncomment this so we can watch the results as they come in. You'll see that the results come out a bit slower when you are querying for these things through the configuration API. So for a really large system, if you have to convert all of um, the FQIDs into and traverse up to the hardware recorder and site, um, it's going to take a long time. So you either need to be prepared for that, or um, update your script so that you pull that information down first. So maybe you have one really long query where you're getting all of the IDs for all of the recording servers and cameras and hardware, and caching that somewhere so that you can do a quick reference in memory to grab those names instead of doing configuration API queries. Um, but right now we won't bother with that. So let's run this real quick, and I'm going to comment that out, and we'll just see the results as they come through. So it takes about 3 seconds, and then we start seeing the results come through, and then we get, I don't know what, 4 results a second or so. Okay. Now, now how do you get that into a CSV? So with PowerShell, that's fairly easy. I'll keep writing that to the console just so we can see it processing it as it runs, so it's not just a blank screen until it's done. And then when it's done, we'll have this results object. We'll send it to the export CSV command, just built into PowerShell, and write that to, put that in PowerShell/test CSV, and then no type information. That'll just make the header a bit cleaner in the CSV file. And then when it's done, we'll have that open up in Notepad. So let's run this again. And there we go. Now we've got a CSV with all of the cameras and their state and location as far as what hardware, recorder, and site they're on. Now, you can speed this up. If you're only interested in cameras that aren't responding, then we could speed this up quite a bit. So if item_state is not equal to, or let's say, yeah, if it's not equal to if it's equal to responding, then we'll continue as well. Okay, so we'll go through and get all of the item states for all of the cameras. And then let's just put this on the top, because we don't need to even bother retrieving the item object if it's responding. So if the camera is responding, continue means go to the next item in the results and skip everything below here. So let's run this again and just see how long it takes to produce that CSV file. There we go. That's faster. So normally you should only have a few cameras that aren't responding. So you'll, by filtering that out, we can generate a detailed report. You're going to do it a lot faster. So thank you for watching. I hope that was informative, and let me know if you have any questions.